Round 4 of the Chennai Chess Masters tournament. Man, I don't even know what to say about this game. I am truly at a loss of words. I'm going to try to do my best, though. But this is from round 4, Chennai Grandmasters tournament with the white pieces. You had Amin, Tabatabaei, and with the black pieces, Arjun, Erigaisi, and man, spectacular game. Like I said, this is like a new evolution. Um, watching Arjun, um, very very exciting player to watch. I know there's a World Chess Championship coming up, but man, watch out for Arjun. After that, if he stays in this type of form, watch out in the next cycle. We'll see, but let's talk about this game today. First, I just want to tell everybody, just please hit that thumbs up button. Check the links below. Consider supporting the channel, but just at the very least, pop in, hit that thumbs up, help promote the videos in the algorithm. All right, let's get into this analysis, man. E4, E5. Amin had the white pieces, Arjun black pieces once again. Knight F3, just typical. 2 knights defense, transposing into the Giuoco piano. Right, it looks like we got into a time machine and we went back to the 1800s. Right, we're seeing these type of setups so much. It looks like Morphy is back. Right, Adolf Anderson is back again. We're seeing these openings, right? For such a long time, we were seeing Roy Lopez, right? Now it's like back to these 2 knights defense positions, Yoko piano. Who knows? Maybe the Evans Gambit will show up once again. Bishop C5, castles, D6, C3. Many options. We're not going to get into the opening theory, but many options for both sides here. A6 is played. Just planning on tucking that dark square bishop back on A7 if need be. A4, H6, all typical setups. H6 just postponing castling, leaving the options open for black to attack. Sometimes when white castles early, like he did, committing his king so early, black will often put this plan into motion of H6, G5, and starting this early attack. Rook E1, and now Bishop A7. All right, so as not to lose time after a move like D4, hitting the bishop on C5. B4, this is another option. So white doesn't now always have to play D4, but he can expand on a queen side. Now here, Arjun goes in for this plan with G5. As I said before, castling is perfectly acceptable. Bishop G4 is acceptable. It just depends on what your desires are in a position. What's your plan? But at least have a plan. So G5 is very direct. And now, the game's gonna take on a very sharp character. And I want to thank Arjun for this, creating this type of scenario where he's just going after his opponent. And it creates this fighting atmosphere all across the board, as we're gonna see. So right away on move 10, the position's already critical, and Amin makes what I feel a slight positional error, and he plays the move Bishop E3 here, and this gives black sort of initiative. It's not that there's anything wrong in trading off the bishops, but I believe the timing is off. So of course, black doesn't want to be put in a scenario where white plays bishop takes A7 and then a rook is awkwardly placed on A7. So of course black most of the time, all other things being equal, is just going to trade on e3. And this is what happened in the game. Bishop takes e3. All right. And then after rook takes e3, g4. All right. And now the knight goes back to e1. Play continue with h5. And we get this situation where black is able to develop this initiative here. I just want to go back and just share my analysis on how white could have improved. So instead of bishop e3 right away, play a move like queen e2. Now, I've highlighted a lot here, but I'll explain everything. So the idea behind queen e2 is to trade off the bishop on e3, right? But just in a few moves. The immediate idea behind queen e2 is to be able to play that queen to a2, attacking the weak pawn on f7 that you see highlighted in red. So for example, well, let me explain the other arrow. So that's what the green arrow is for. The red arrow highlights the direction that the knight is going to go. So that knight on f3 will go to d2 and then f1. And then white will be prepared properly to play the move bishop e3. Whereby now when black takes on e3, the knight is going to a very powerful square on e3, covering the d5 and the f5 squares respectively. And this is a move that, of course, black would not want to make. So it puts black in a situation where he would have to accept white actually making the exchange on a7 and his rook going to the awkward square. So with that in mind, here's the sample variation. So for instance, g4, right after queen e2, right? So queen e2, g4. Now the knight goes to d2. All right, so that's part one. Let's say h5. Now knight f1, h4, and now bishop e3. And see, now black doesn't really want to take in this scenario on e3, because he would be helping white develop his knight to a nice square for free. So instead, knight h5, perhaps going to f4, of course. And now bishop takes, rook takes. And now, anticipating the knight coming to f4, attacking the queen just skates off to a2, hitting the pawn on f7, queen e7, protecting that pawn, knight e3. And black can play g3, and the game is double-edged. This is but this is a better scenario. As you can see, this knight is very well placed on the e3 square for both attack and defensive purposes. So queen e2 is an improvement, according to me. Another improvement that I found is knight a3, which has the same type of idea, and I'll just show you real quick. So knight a3, for example, bishop d7, and there's queen e2 again. Knight e7, knight c2, and notice how the knight on c2 will allow the bishop to again go to e3 with the same idea. So knight g6, of course, black has the same idea, right? h3, trying to slow down the attack. Queen e7, there's bishop e3. Again, black doesn't want to take on e3 in this scenario. So knight f4, queen d2, castles. Again, this is just a sample line. Bishop takes, and knight e3, again with the pressure on these squares. And then rook a8, of course, just, straightening out that rook that is awkwardly placed on a7. So those two moves, instead of 10 bishop e3, queen e2, or knight a3, I view them as improvements. So let's go on with the game. So back to the move that was played. Bishop e3 was played right away. So Arjun just captured. Bishop takes e3. Rook takes e3. And now G4 was played here, knocking the knight back. Knight E1, and notice the difference. Look where this knight is. Look where the rook is. Rook on E3 is kind of awkwardly placed. The pieces kind of become uncoordinated, you know, for some time. So he plays H5. Another idea is knight H5 here, going to F5, F4 immediately. This is something that I thought, looking over the game myself. And when I look over these games, I always check them. I always look, you know, and I try to analyze them as best as I can without. I don't use any engines or anything like that. And then later on, I'll do like a blunder check with the engines to make sure I just didn't overlook something, you know, real silly. But knight H5 is another idea that I had thought of. You know, with the simple idea of going to F4, and of course G3 would be provoked, but nevertheless it creates a hook on the H file, you know, at G3. So later on H5, H4, you know, can come into play. So for instance, knight F6, knight D2, knight H7, because in these type of closed positions you could get a lot of maneuvering going on, and you can see the knight going to a G5, for example. And of course white has played too, so it's just different ideas in the position that I'm sharing with you. So knight E1, Arjun just plays H5, and he's just going for it. D4. So white tries to strike back in the center, and now H4 is played. I remember doing, you know, while I was analyzing this game, I kept asking myself, how is black going to get, you know, his queen side pieces out? I see that he is attacking vigorously on the king side, but it just seems like he doesn't have enough, you know, firepower. Like, how is he going to get the bishop out? How is he going to get the rook, you know, into the game on A8, etc.? So I had thought during this game, I had this idea of instead of H4, I had another idea of queen E7 here, protecting, fortifying this E pawn. And so, for example, bishop D5, bishop D7. Let's say white takes. Get rid of that nasty bishop. Queen D4, F6, knight D3, continuing the press. Bishop, then comes the F5. The other knight comes out, H3, G3, castles. And of course, getting off of that, you know, that E file. But the knight is very, very powerfully placed in the center. And this was, again, this is just another idea in the position. Of course, then the A rook can be the A rook. The rook on A8 can be developed to, you know, E8 or something like that eventually. Okay, it's still a long way to go for both sides. But just wanted to share with you some ideas alternative ideas along the way. Often in these positions, there's many different plans. That's the beauty of chess. There's a lot of different plans you can use. It's not necessarily like there's just one plan and you have to stick with that. You know, it's just whatever you can think of, and you just have to make sure that it's tactically sound. If it's tactically sound, then you can try. As long as you're not going to lose just right away, you know, give it a shot. So Arjun just pushed straight forward. H4. Bishop E2. All right, by Amin. And now Queen E7. And at this point, a critical choice was made by white, and he closed up the position. So he closed the business down. All right, so this idea of maybe one day exchanging on e5, or keeping the a2 f7 diagonal open for the light square bishop. Nope, it's out of business sale, shutting the doors. So d5, and now knight b8 with the idea of just hopping back out at d7 eventually. Of course, in these type of positions, black has to be careful not to, get in a situation where he just can't get his pieces out. Period. So knight d2 was played, and then black played the move queen to f8. All right, transferring the queen over, obviously, to the king side to aid in the attack. I mean, black's plan is very, very obvious. What's different, what stands out to me about it is just how his queen side pieces seem just to be not fully participating, but yet he still has a dangerous attack somehow. And it just seems like white is not, of course, white is not lost here, but just looking at his pieces in the center, for example, right, the rook on e3, all the pieces just look like awkwardly placed. And I just find it very interesting, that those pieces look the way they do after only 16 moves. So the game continued. Knight f1. Of course, another idea that I had thought of is rook g8. I'll just leave that on the table. Queen f8 was played. Knight f1. Another idea for white, I just don't want to show all the ideas for black. Another idea for white instead of knight f1 is a5. And this kind of fixes the pawn on a6 and prepares to bust open the queen side at some point with b5 or c4, c5, so that when b5 is played, a5 is there, so that when b5 is played, black can't just keep the position closed with, say, a5, for example. So that's another idea in the position. c4 is another idea. c4, and let's say after g3, f takes g3, black could play a move like a5, and this is good for black because by forcing that b pawn to move, whether it goes to b5 or whether it captures on a5, it opens up the c5 square for the knight to come out, the knight on b8 to come out to d7 and say hop on c5, for example. See, like b5, knight bd7, for instance. So that's just a little sample cut right there. So after knight f1, which was played in the game, Arjun played queen h6. He just kept it moving. c4 was played. Again, I like this idea, a5, fixing the pawn on a6. But c4 was played, and then Arjun played the move g3. And again, an idea for him is a5 with the same idea that I presented earlier, except that black, remember, white is not forced to play b5 or forced to take on a5. Instead, he could play a move like c5, for example, and then black can continue with his plan. So it seems like Arjun was just avoiding as much as he could any type of conflict on the queen side. As far as him, he didn't want to play on the queen side unless he absolutely had to. So he just kind of let the queen side be as far as the pawns were concerned. So he didn't play moves, for instance, like a5, trying to weaken the c5 square and things like that. He just kept pressing with this attack on the king side. So it was like basically king side or bust. So G3, F takes G3, H takes G3, very natural. H3. And of course, while I'm analyzing this, man, the alarm bells are ringing off in my head. Bishop takes H3. Like what else? Bishop, Bishop takes H3 is screaming at me. And so and looking at it, I saw Bishop takes H3, G takes H3. I actually set it up on the chessboard. Queen takes H3, Bishop F3, and I saw that Black is not like winning per se, but he definitely has compensation in that position. So that's something that you guys are to look at. Maybe put it on an engine or something like that. But it seems like a lot of fun to play. Bishop takes H3 right here. So for example, Bishop takes H3, G takes H3, Queen takes. Bishop F3 is forced because of the H1 square has to be protected, at all costs because of the mate. So Bishop F3, and then play can continue knight BD7. Then Bishop G2, of course. Queen would go back. Knight G3. A5. Knight hops in. So again, there's no mate or anything per se, but I do feel that Black has compensation. And of course, there's many different variations off, within this line. Like I said, it's just a sample line, so you can see what it looks like. I don't want to just say, hey, you can play Bishop takes H3, without showing at least some kind of sample continuation. It's very dangerous. I mean, you put your opponent under a lot of pressure, force them to calculate a lot of variations, and I could see a player like a Tao or playing something like that. But Arjun played knight BD7. Nothing wrong with this move. C5. And then knight F8. So he's just bringing more cavalry right to the forefront. And here, white plays C takes D6, which looks very reasonable, right? He's creating his own counterplay and making sure that he can get penetrate Black's position. After all, Black's king is still in the middle of the board, so if he can get up the the C file and penetrate that way, he can cause Black a lot of problems. C takes D6, and now another critical moment here. Queen C1 is played, and you can see there's kind of like this idea not only of penetrating, via the C file, but also this idea of rook takes pawn here, and then trying to trade off the queens, basically ending the Black attack here. So it looks like a good good idea. Definitely the idea is good, but again, in chess, tactics are king. And here is where Arjun called me up and said, I heard you talking about that Bishop takes H3 idea. You mind if I use it? I said, no problem. Go ahead. And he played Bishop takes H3 here. Great move. G takes H3. And then knight G6. So by waiting, a little bit later on, instead of playing Bishop H3 right away, he has the other knight over on the king side to participate. All right, but the game is still very much up for grabs. But this just shows you what type of player Arjun is, that he's willing to take these chances. Before we get too far ahead, I want to go back because I said Queen C1, had a good idea behind it, but I found an improvement here, and thinking about it, right? After all, black has this bishop takes h3, so why don't we protect against that, and we put the other rook up here and play rook a3. All right, and so now it's not so easy to get away with that move with both rooks up there. So play could continue. Knight g6, knight takes g3, bishop d7, and now you try to take over the c file. And this is kind of ideal setup that white wants, is to be able to start trading down pieces, consolidate, and then eventually use his space advantage in the end game. So I believe rook a3 is definitely an improvement. So after queen c1, bishop takes h3, g takes h3, and knight g6 was played. Another idea, of course, is queen takes h3. And the variations look very similar to what I showed you before. c8, and bishop coming to g2. And again, black has compensation. You will really have to try hard to use your imagination, for attacking. But again, the game is up for grabs in this type of situation. So knight g6 instead of queen h3, and then white continued with this plan and just played simply rook takes g3. Of course, he would love to trade the queens at this moment, but Arjun just simply played knight f4, and this kind of exposes the fault with the idea, because now black is threatening the fork here, with the bishop on e2 just hanging, and also he's going to be able to grab this pawn on h3. Better the rook takes, right, which was played in the game. The better move to play knight takes g3. And the reason why, you'll see in a second. So if knight takes g3, knight f4, right, with the same idea, grab the pawn. Well, first notice too, let me point this out to you. Notice in rook, after rook takes g3, which was played in the game, after knight f4, the bishop is just hanging. You see that? Right? The bishop is just left hanging, and white has to protect it. After knight takes g3, knight f4, notice the bishop is not hanging. And now, not only is the bishop not hanging, now the bishop can drop back and add extra protection to the h3 pawn. Now, if knight takes h3, white is happy with this because he can just start exchanging things. Bishop takes h3, queen takes h3, queen c2, for example. Rook g8. It all looks scary, but it doesn't work tactically for black anymore. Now the white pieces start to drive black away. Queen g2, queen h6. All right, attacking the rook on e3. It's hanging. So rook c3. That's a good move, right? Let's take over the file. This is also possible, but could just take over the file. So that's an example of an improvement there. Instead of rook takes g3, just knight takes. Okay, so that's that. So in the game, rook takes g3 was played, and now knight f4. So white's idea was, hey, I'll just put my queen there and protect the bishop, and perhaps trade off the queens at another time. So now knight takes h3. So rook takes h3. So notice that instead of white being able to trade the bishop for the knight, now he has to give up the exchange. So rook takes h3, queen takes, and rook takes. And so now we have this this end game, imbalance here. And again, the game is still up for grabs here. It's not like one side has an advantage over the other, but what you have is a player that is 2800 in Arjun playing against a player that's almost 2700. And of course, white is very strong also, but there's definitely differences at that level. And these imbalanced positions, highly complicated positions, is gonna favor the higher rated player. And usually at this level, it just comes down to, just like the small things, right? Little details. And we're going to see that in this game. So the game continued. Bishop f3, right? Protecting the pawn on e4, right? The knight is, ready to chop it off. So just bishop e4. Rook c8, taking over the file. So now finally the question is answered, right? How are all black's pieces on the queen side gonna get involved? Now we see they're all involved. Everything's involved now. Rook b1. All right. So this game is definitely, dynamically equal. We'll use that vague term. Okay, but full of play, which is fantastic, especially for today's chess that sometimes seems so dry. But it just shows that if you have imagination and fighting spirit, that you can make the game exciting if you're willing to fight. It doesn't always have to be dry and just drawish games. So depends on your temperament, and attitude. So rook c3 was played. Knight d2. Right, just protecting that bishop. And now king e7. And when I analyze the game, for me, the first thing that came to mind for me was just knight h5, with the idea of going to the f4 square. Of course, bishop could take, right? He doesn't want you to go into f4. And play can continue like so. And black's job is to try to break the coordination of the white pieces. This is just a sample line. So take your pick of which side you would prefer. So knight h5 is a viable option. So king e7 was played. White played a5. And now knight d7 was played was played by Arjun. Of course, there's several other options here. Knight h5 again. Same idea as I presented earlier. King d8. Possible. But knight d7. King f2. And again, I would like to mention, I do mention them from time to time on my videos. It's not always that you must find the best move in a position or the strongest move. What's necessary is that you have a realizable plan, a plan that you can put into motion. And that's really, I think, what a lot of chess players miss. They always try to find the strongest move, especially being used to engines nowadays. They're looking for the strongest move in the engine, the top move in the engine. And really what's most important is to find the realizable plan, a plan that you can do. And usually once you find a plan, if you find a plan first, the moves will come much easier because you have a plan. So we saw Arjun with this idea of h6 g5. He saw that white castled early, and he based his whole game on attack on the queen side. I'm sorry, on the king side. And once he had his plan, it was easier for him to find the moves, because the moves are all going to be connected with that plan. It's like it's like a stream of thought. It's not disjointed. Like, okay, I'm making this move, and now I'm going to make this move, and the moves aren't like connected. It's like one line of thought that's manifested over the chessboard. So if anything, you could take that lesson. Again, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. So the game continued. Knight f8. And option king f6. It's a move I thought of, right? King f6. Knight f8. b5. This is a good move by white. It's a good move because, again, he's going to take that rook, try to get to the 7th, try to create a pass pawn. So Arjun plays knight g6. Move I thought of looking at the game was just rook h2. When I was thinking about it, I was trying to figure out a way where I can win one of those minor pieces, or like just basically bind white's minor pieces up. So I had came up with this idea of playing rook h2, right? Because he's kind of he has to be very careful because of the position of the knights. You might, for instance, if the king attacked the rook, say with g1, you could just win the knight on d2, for example. So the idea is kind of based off of just the awkward positioning of the white pieces. So play could go knight g2, for example, and then rook c2. Let's say bishop takes a6, and now rook d2. King g3, attacking the rook. Give up that exchange. Rook d3. Saying the rook gets what he wants. He's able to create that passer. And again, the game is up for grabs. No, white is not winning here. So Arjun did not play rook h2, which is playable. He played knight g6. White played his idea. Bishop takes a6. I'm sorry, b takes a6. B takes a6. And then bishop g2, hitting the rook. Another idea for white is just coming to the 7th rank, which I believe is pretty strong. Yeah. But bishop g2 was played, and you can see by transposition, now he comes to the 7th rank. So there it is. King f8, rook b6. And when I was looking at this, man, I was like, it seemed like black is in a little trouble here. Like, it seemed like tables have turned a little bit. White is about to get this pass pawn. The rook is on the b6, attacking the d pawn and the a pawn. And, there's no attack, for black anymore. It seemed like things are turning around here. Let's keep going. So knight f4 was played. Rook takes a6. And then rook a3, getting behind the pass pawn. And I'll just show you something real quick. This position has a lot of venom in it. Very dangerous. So for instance, say if you got tired, you're a little lazy, and you say, you know what, you're black. You say, hey, let's trade off a pair of knights here. The one, get rid of one of those knights. So knight d3, rook d3, knight c4. Very strong move, because now the rook cannot go to a3 and get behind that pass pawn, and it cannot go to d2. It has to take some time to get behind that pawn, and the knight on c4 and the rook on a6 are attacking the d6 pawn simultaneously. play can continue now. King e7 to protect that pawn, right? See the rook on h6 in conjunction with the king on e7 protecting that pawn. Knight e3 now. Now threatening the fork. So king d7, rook a7. King has to go back. Excellent square for the knight. Again, hitting the d6 pawn, so the rook must stay on the 6th rank. Now bishop f1, hitting the rook on d3 and helping to support the pawn up the a file. Rook b3. And then knight e7 here with the idea, of course, going to c6 forking. So you can see just like a little bit of laziness, right? Mental fatigue or, slacking, if you will, can lead to a very difficult, if not losing position for black. And I believe this position is definitely lost, just for the record. So Arjun here has to be very careful. That's why I say the game is up for grabs. Either player could win this game. It could end in a draw. Very exciting game. So Arjun plays rook a3. And this is where that extra 100 rating points comes into play. Because these are like two top tennis players volleying right there in like a long volley. Who is going to be the one that's going to make the last big play? Who's going to be the one that's going to finally hit the ball into the net and make the error? All right? That's what's going on right now. And of course, in those situations, it's going to favor the top player, right? Those of you that follow tennis, especially for a long time, remember the great epic battles of Federer and Novak Djokovic, right? Nadal, those type of players. And then you have the new generation coming in like Carlos Alcaraz and, players, of that nature. And you see the long volleys back and forth. This same thing happens in chess. These players are volleying right now. Who's gonna break? So rook a8, king g7, a6, and rook a2 now. So now you see the knight being questioned. So knight ef3. So now the knights, protecting each other. And now here, black finds a really nice move and plays f5. F5 doesn't hang a pawn, but the idea is to play e4. Again, just playing on the condition, right, of the, the pin situation. So if e takes, then black will play e4. Again, venom in the position. So let's say again, you say, you know what? Let me trade this rook on a8. And you play this move. Watch what happens. Rook takes, king takes, bishop f1. Remember, protecting the a6 pawn. Let's just throw the rook to a5, bishop c4. And now white's whole idea is just to support this pawn and get it to a8 using those three minor pieces in coordination together. So knight e1, king g7, and that's like the whole lesson of this line right here. Knight b4, knight e7. c6, knight b1, just getting in the position. So use knight c3, for example, and you can just see the difficulty of this position. And again, black would be lost here. I'll leave it there. So just wanted to show you some examples that there's still a lot of venom in the position, a lot of ways to go wrong. That's one of them, right? I showed you the idea of knight d3 earlier. Check, want to trade the knights off, And this idea also, so you got to maintain your focus even as the end draws near in the game. So f5 is played. Good move. So rook a7 by Amin. Now, I'm not sure how far he saw in the game, but e takes f5, even though it looks bad, it could actually be played. But I mean, again, it's like a forest, man, of variations. It's like how they say how Tao would take his opponents in a deep forest and all this stuff like that. This is one of those games. So I'll just show you this sample variation. So e takes f5, e4, just e7. Now knight takes g2. And now black is not able to capture this knight right away, with his pawn. So he has to play rook d8. I'm sorry, since black cannot capture the knight right away, because this pawn is threatening to promote after rook d8. I'm sorry. So e3, check. So king takes g2, e takes d2, knight takes d2, and you can see how white is playing, with this idea of, hey, I have a passed pawn. So if you do anything, I'm going to promote this pawn. So he winds up doing that. And the game is just very, very double-edged. Again, this has the idea of just playing the rook down here, checking, winning this rook right here. And so you have the rooks and pawn versus the rook knight and 2 pawns. Probably drawish. But again, there's so many alternate lines that you could, choose from, that it might turn a seemingly drawish evaluation into a win. Just one move. Like I said, this is just a sample line. If e takes f5 was played. Instead, he just played rook a7. Very natural move, throwing a check. Rook a8. King g7 was played again. Rook a7. So it looks like white will be content with the draw. King f6. And now the moment of truth has arisen. I think that's incorrect English. The moment of truth has arrived. There we go. And white plays the move bishop f1. Now, we've seen bishop f1 in several of the variations that I've presented. But again, tactics are king in chess. And unfortunately, you can't always use the same move the same idea 1 or 2 or 3 moves later. And this is why chess is so stressful on the mind, because you have to constantly keep evaluating and re-evaluating the position over and over and over again, because one move can change the outcome of the position, the judgment. You could be better, and then the next move, okay, that your opponent made, now it's equal. Idea that worked 2 moves ago doesn't work anymore. So he plays this move, bishop f1, because he's figuring, hey, I have this idea that I just showed you with, after the pawn takes. So black takes. And his idea is bishop c4. Right, I'm going to attack get this counterplay. Rook c2. And now, what could be better than this, right? You have the pawn supported by the bishop. The rook is attacking here and subsequently attacking his rook back here. You're threatening to... Sorry about that. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's ears. Sorry. That was a mic drop. So you're attacking. I mean, it looks great, but Arjun plays this move, rook h3. There's a trap in the position, and let me show it to you. So the idea is that, and this is probably where White miscalculated. He probably just saw, hey, he takes this knight here as he always wanted to. So if he takes after e takes f3, rook takes d6. This is the idea. King g5, rook takes h6, rook d2 check, king takes f3, rook c2, rook c6, rook c3, right? And the idea behind this is to get the rook behind the pawn because he can't go to a2 here because of the bishop on c4. So he checks first, king e4, and then gets behind the pawn. And then White plays king takes e5. All right, and this is great for White. As you can see, he has two protected passed pawns, rook and bishop versus rook knight. It's over. That's how close White was in this game to winning this. So Arjun found a move and played rook h3. So now king e3 was played. E takes f3, and now he has this idea: knight e4, king f5, knight d6 check, king g6, and now bishop f1 hitting the rook. But there's a surprise, and the surprise is rook e2 check. That's right, surprise, surprise, right in your eyes. Rook e2 check, and the game is over. White was forced to resign, and I'll show you why. After rook e2, if bishop takes e2, f takes e2, right? Discovered check by the rook on h3. If king d2, right, you got to stop the passed pawn. Then just simply rook d3 check, protected by the brilliant knight on f4. Let's say king c2, then just simply queen. If king f2, rook h2 check, king e1, rook h1, followed again by the queen. So brilliant, brilliant game. Nice tactics, back and forth action. But I wouldn't do the game justice if I didn't show the improvement over bishop f1. That was like the fatal error. All right. Instead of bishop f1 here, rook d7 right away. For example, that is. And like I said, just one move away. And I understand after rook d7, it's like, hey, you know, I'm not protecting the pawn. So I could see why he did bishop f1 first. So again, to show you the brutality of chess, and man, why it's so taxing is you know, just check out the reason. You know, for instance, black cannot take on a6 here, and it's just messed up. So just real quick, this was what was played, and this is basically the losing sequence right here. This kind of like sets it all off. Just this one move. You know, White is probably tired. You know, just oversight, just miscalculate. It's possible, right? We're all human. But just look at this now. So this is the move White is supposed to play. It's rook d7, right, with this immediate attack here on this pawn. Now, at first sight, it looks counterintuitive. Why? Because rook takes a6. It looks like a dumb move. But let's go further into the analysis. Bishop f1. And you remember what I was saying before, how a move might work in one situation and not in another situation. This is a perfect example. Here, bishop f1 is the correct move now. And the reason why is because that rook cannot stay on the 6th rank to protect the d pawn. I'll show you why. So I'll show you the first variation after bishop f1 hitting the rook. Okay, the rook gets off the rank, of course, and then this is how white would achieve the advantage, because once the black rook leaves the 6th rank, the pawn can be captured, the rook can be exchanged, and then the pawns are off to the races. And those 3 minor pieces plus that pawn is going to be enough to obtain the victory. And I'll leave that variation right there. So once the rook leaves that rank, it's a wrap. So of course he tries to protect. So rook b6 instead. That's meant by knight c4. And now you have 2 problems. The rook on b6 is attacked and the pawn on d6. So let's say you go back to a6. After all, the knight is on c4, bishop's on f1, so the knight is kind of standing in the way. Well, white would just take on d6 now with the knight. So it gets the pawn, and now you have this attack on the bishop. Attack on the rook. Check. Let's say rook a1, king d2, for example, and you just start walking that way. He can't afford to capture the bishop, because at the knight e8, it's just a maiden attack. Knight e8 check. King, rook g7, and rook g5 mate. And then black would just start losing his pawns, and the game, you can see the game is just winning for white at this point. So it just goes to show you how close white was to actually pulling out an upset. So that was the move, ladies and gentlemen. That was the move that white had to play, is rook d7. Now I already showed you that rook takes a6 couldn't be played. So this means black would have had to just play f takes e4. Rook takes d6. Rook takes d7. There's that move again, bishop f8. And black can't afford to capture the knight because of the the passed pawn. So once he brings the other rook down to try to capture the knight on e2, then the knight is free to go. And this right here is just pretty much equal. This ending right here, rook and knight versus rook and pawn. But again, might be equal for engines, but human players can make mistakes. These are complicated scenarios. So anyway, it's been a long video. It was just a lot of analysis, a lot of variations behind actually what was played. To me, that's what makes the games beautiful, because these are all, I can't say all, but these are some of the thoughts that the players had, and not only that they might have had, but these are thoughts that I've had myself, because like I said, I analyze these games with my own thoughts, and then I kind of just blunder check, but and then I just kind of put them all together and give them my spin, a take on the game. So if you like games fully analyzed and not just skimmed over, this is the right channel. I know some of these videos are long, but like I said, this channel is about chess, and the beauty of it, and really learning from the games. You know what I mean? And some of these games you just can't just skim over. do a quick 10-15 minute video. Oh, he does this and that, boom, 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 and it's over. It's like so much more than that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, please, just no matter what, just hit that thumbs up button so the video can get pushed along in our algorithm, and consider supporting the channel with the links below. Let me know what you guys think of this game, and I'll see you guys again on the next round.